Welcome to the third and final session of our seminar, Seeing Beyond What is Visible. So far, we have explored how technology mirrors our perception and how the unseen world leaves its mark on our physical reality. But the most profound question remains: if we are imperfect, how can we ever hope to see a perfect God face to face? In this session, we go deep into the biblical understanding of the spirit, soul, and body. We will explore why spiritual understanding doesn't come naturally to us, and how the promise of a new heart, as spoken by the prophet Ezekiel, is the key to a total transformation of the mind. Join us as we conclude our journey by looking at the practical instructions for living where law and gospel meet.
What we're going to look at now is, I think it was Aaron had that verse about Paul said, now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. So Ben's going to talk to us about seeing God face to face. And I think what will come out of Ben's talk is he will give us some indications about a purpose in life. You know, so many people today don't have any purpose in their life or any reason to look for anything, but it's a hope for the future, and he's going to develop a framework within which we can seek to understand God. And among other things, Ben's going to talk to us about spirit, soul and body, why spiritual understanding doesn't come naturally, why not everybody has it. You remember we talked that the verse from Jesus right at the beginning, where the disciples asked him why he spoke in parables, and he said, because people can see but not understand. And so we're trying to actually understand as well as seeing. And so who then could stand before God face to face? But Ben, there was just a little thing I was going to say to you. Were you aware that there's a warrant out for the invisible man? It was for failure to appear.
Look, I didn't actually bring any dad jokes today, so I'm pleased that Rodney did, as usual, which is good. That was a lot of things, Rodney. I'm pleased you told me what I had to talk about. I think it worked out to be about 8 things. So that'll take until about 8 o'clock tonight, so that's all right. Where everybody get comfortable, it should be okay. I was quite excited in Aaron's talk because he's talking about smart glasses, and I was under the impression that smart glasses made you smart, but apparently they don't. So I'm not so excited now, because I think I'd often need a set of those glasses. But anyway, that's all good. But James's, I made a lot of notes in James. I hope everybody's been making notes. But especially that, I love that coincidence is God's way of staying anonymous. I think that's really good. How else can God sort of reveal himself to us without sort of interfering in our life or taking control or completely annihilating everything with his presence? And I thought that was a really interesting thing. And when I was thinking about this topic of seeing God face to face, I thought, well, who can stand before God anyway? We certainly know from the passages in the Bible that nobody can stand before God. Certainly not as we are, which is it's a real conundrum really, because eventually we know that everybody will. And yes, it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be a terrifying experience in some ways, but then it'll be a wonderful experience in other ways as well. But the couple of things from James's talk as well, which I thought was great. The story of Balaam and his ass. It's interesting how we as humans understand that animals seem to have this instinct which we can't explain, and of course they can't explain. But before there's going to be an enormous, like a storm or something like that, they will instinctively move out of harm's way. Or we've seen it in with natural disasters and things like that. They seem to have a little bit of an insight into perhaps what's going to happen. And I guess we have a similar sort of thing. We do get, some people will say that they've got a bad feeling about something, for example. And what I'm hoping to sort of explore today a little bit is to look at the makeup of man and see how that we can explain that with our different aspects, the way we're put together, and certainly what it would take for us as human beings, as sons of Satan, as it calls us, to then be able to stand and see God face to face. A couple of other things I thought were really interesting as well. Yeah, with the prophecy thing, with the prophecy comment, there is a prophecy that Cyrus would actually be the one that would allow the Jews to go back to Israel. And that was made by Isaiah. You did have it on the slide, but that was like a couple of hundred years before it had even happened. I think Isaiah was actually around in the reign of Hezekiah and Manasseh, I believe. They were the two. So that was a long time before.
Israelites,
Oh yeah.
not Jews.
No, Jews. They were Jews. Yeah. Anyway, and it was actually in the time of those kings that prophecy was made, which was a long time before the exile. So that was interesting. Anyway, I thought, but I guess moving on to my topic for the day. How do we tie together this concept of seeing beyond what is actually visible? And in the context of making it personal, of actually making it about something we understand a little bit about, being ourselves. And what I've sort of broken it up into here is this realms of perception. We understand, and I don't want to give too much away from my talk, but we know from 1 Thessalonians 5:23 that we are made up of a spirit, of a soul, and a body component, a physical component. And it's interesting the way that these different realms, I guess you could say, or these different aspects actually interact is very, I guess, it very much has to do with, or it helps us to explain, I should say, how we can we can actually comprehend knowledge and gain understanding and all of those sorts of things. And I thought I'd start with a couple of examples. Now, one of the things that I do is I actually work in the IT industry. And now, can anybody here, except for Richard and possibly Paul, tell me what this is? It's a what? It's a circuit board, yes. A particular type of circuit board. What's that? Yes, there's a CPU slot. That's right. We're getting warmer. This is good. It's a motherboard. That's right. It's a motherboard. It goes inside your computer, right? Now, Richard, this one's for you. I'm going to put you on the spot here. Okay, what's wrong with this motherboard?
It hasn't got memory, it hasn't got chips, it hasn't got...
But specifically, it's obviously AI generated, and the reason why I tell you it's AI generated is because it looks great, as you say. It's got a CPU slot, it's got spots for the RAM, it's got slots for your different peripherals, but there's a whole bunch of connectors down there which don't actually exist. I know, I can tell you from my experience that you don't actually. It's got something that looks like a SATA connection, but anyway, it's AI generated. That was just a side note, but the interesting thing is that people in IT, they look at that, they go, yes, that's a main board. But I've got a little bit of a story or something that happened to our IT department back in the early 2000s. And it was called capacitor plague. Now, we used to have, in the end, after a few years of this, problem being out there, we actually had to have signs up all over the technical department that said, have you checked the mainboard capacitors yet? Because in between 1999 and the year 2005, they actually had a massive problem worldwide with the manufacturing of these capacitors. Now, a capacitor is something that regulates voltage, basically. It does, in a nutshell. And the problem with the pictured one there, you'll notice, is it has a little bulging top. It's what's called, we called it in our workshop, a swollen capacitor. Other terms are pregnant capacitors, things like that. But it's due to a manufacturing fault. Now, everybody here would look at that, most people would look at that, and most technicians would look at that and they wouldn't think anything about that. As soon as we gave them sort of the knowledge of, what it was that they were to look for, they knew what they had to look for. They could find a device that had this fault, and they knew that that would explain a whole raft of other problems. Now, what comes from that is you could actually then apply that knowledge, and you can say, okay, so this machine is performing badly. It's doing all of these odd things, and with that understanding, we could diagnose what was wrong with the machine, and we'd say, okay, this is most likely this fault. Anyway, millions and millions of devices were affected over that period, and the current or the common symptom was that they were just unreliable. It was a painful time, but it's a way that we can see things as people without actually understanding. Because if we don't have that knowledge or that insight as to what the problem could be. My second story is a little bit more biblical. There was a recent event at a school, Christian school, and where the principal got up onto the stage and called various students up from the audience, and he washed their feet. Now, it was a very interesting thing, I thought, when I heard about this, because I imagine that a lot of the children in the audience probably had no clue the significance of what he was actually doing. No doubt a lot of the teachers would have known the story. They would have known the example that Jesus gave where he washed the disciples' feet, and how we as Christians need to be servants to each other, and of course those that are in authority need to be the servants of all. And I think the thing is that it was a great example, or at least it might have been, I guess all of the kids would have got something out of it, but some children would have certainly gotten more out of it than others, those who had known the story and the point that he was trying to get across. It was a very interesting thing, very interesting thing, because I can imagine that the kinder kids, for example, sitting in the front row would have been going, why would you do that? Go and make them do it themselves, which is exactly what he wanted them to say. But yeah, anyway, it's another example of how we can see things and not understand the true nature or the full depth of what it is that we are perceiving. And so I came to a few conclusions from thinking about those couple of examples. It's possible for us to see and to hear without actually understanding. We can gain knowledge from what we see and what we hear out there in the world, but it may mean nothing to us, or it may not, the true, I guess, implications of what we're seeing could be lost on us. So we may not understand. Because to be able to understand, you have to have knowledge. You have to have a bit of an insight. And that knowledge is actually gained by study, experience, or insight from another source. True understanding also depends on your perception as well. And today what I want to look at is the different realms of perception, the way that we receive information, whether it be from the spiritual realm, whether it be from the physical realm, whether it actually comes from that metaphysical sort of realm, which is, of course, our soul itself. So the makeup of mankind resolves it in this particular way. I gave a little bit about, I mentioned this just before. We as people are made up of more than just our physical being, aren't we? We're not just a bunch of organisms running around. This is, in many ways, the concept of consciousness is one of the greatest proofs that we are created and not just formed or just come of ourselves as such. And I think it's interesting because we as a being work together. Each of these realms of our being work together, and through those things we can gain experience, we can perceive what's going on, we can learn, we can act, we can grow, we can change, we can understand, and most importantly, we can discern what it is. So let's explain these different realms, these different parts. We understand that our spiritual part is the part that brings life to our being. In Genesis, we hear that God breathed into Adam's nostrils the breath of life. The Hebrew word that is used for breath there is actually the same word that is used for the word spirit. And so what we find is that God gave the Spirit to actually make the person operate. Much like you would have, say, a fire that boils a pot with water in it. You remove the fire, everything dies off, becomes cold, just goes back to inanimate. The spiritual realm gives us an awareness of something other than just what we come up with in our minds. It also gives us some of those bigger, the answers to some of those bigger questions, like, is there more than just our world? What happens when we die? What happens, what is the meaning of life? All of these things are related to that spiritual realm. I won't go through all of the points with this, but you can see the soul or the metaphysical is quite tied up with it's our seat of discernment. It's where we understand things, it's where we make choices, it's where our emotions sit. It also is the thing that has appetite or longing, and it's also where we form our identity of who we are. The body is something we can all understand. We see things, we hear things, we touch, taste, smell, we experience pain, we know if we're hot or cold, we know if we're standing up, we're aware of ourselves. It's something that we're aware. So in the Christian Israelite Church, we look at mankind as being distinctly made up of these three parts. And each of them are very relevant for how we process Bible doctrine, teaching, and how we see the world, and how we relate to God. So I thought we might have a look at a few examples of what's the doorbell? Of how these different spiritual realms, these perception realms, I should say, actually interact. A few things like when we look at the awe of God, and we stand in awe of God's creation. And let's see what happens there. So I've got our little makeup on the left-hand side there. And what we can see is, let's just go through the motions here. So we might see a beautiful sunset, or we might hear the roar of thunder in a storm. Our soul actually takes that in and it translates that into it takes those sensory inputs and it makes it into, it tells us that something is comforting or, powerful or beautiful. But what we find is that there is another thing there that makes us really want or desire to know about that there's more to us or more to this particular event than just the event itself. And we find that the Spirit itself actually ministers to us and teaches us that these are the wonders of God. If you see a beautiful sunset, or you see something beautiful out there in creation, you immediately your response naturally is to want to give glory to something else. There is something really amazing out there. That's the way that this sort of spiritual realm interacts with our metaphysical responding to a physical event. Another one that we all know about, physical or emotional hurt. We might fall over, we might have some sad news, we might see something shocking out there in our community. And of course we respond to that. It is everybody does that. It's our human thing that we do, is to actually respond with some sort of a emotional response, or something that is based on perhaps our experience as well. What we know also is that the Spirit, in that case, will minister to us. As Christians, we understand we have a close relationship, or we build a close relationship with God. And through that, we can actually receive comfort. We can have things called to mind that we have read before in the Bible, and we can receive encouragement. And you'll notice that as well as that sort of input going into our soul, like down in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got the arrow going up into the soul, that metaphysical region. We also see that the Spirit actually gives us a chance to respond back into that physical realm as well. We can actually control our own emotions, and we can respond in a positive way. Hearing and recognizing truth is a very interesting one. It's about how we learn. So we might hear a message, we might read something in the Bible, we might read, we might read the wrong thing, or we might see something we shouldn't see. Basically what happens is our mind and our soul translate these words into something that we can relate to. In the case of what I was mentioning before with the washing of the feet, those kids would have seen what was going on, but they would have had no knowledge or understanding as to how that was to be interpreted until, of course, the principal went on to explain the concept of what it was that he was doing, or that was done. And so it's a very interactive type of thing that happens between all those different realms. Now, there is one more thing that I mentioned. This is kind of almost like the animal instinct, phenomenon that we see out there. Occasionally we do actually, I don't know about you, but occasionally you do actually get an insight into something else that's going on, which is beyond comprehension. Like James said, it's the coincidences. It's these are the ways that we get a little bit of information heavily filtered from that spiritual realm. I don't know about you, but one of the strangest things I've noticed is that there'll be occasions where you'll think about a particular person, and then all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, they're calling on the phone, and you're like, what's going on here? It's not something you can control. It's not something that you can really harness, I guess. But it does sort of give us a bit of an insight into the fact that there must be something else that's going on out there. And that's what and I would call that is that little bit of information that's being filtered down from that spiritual realm. Something we've all experienced. Yeah, but as I say, most often the insights are very vague and unclear, which is which is quite a notable thing, given that physical messages that come from our eyes, our senses, all that sort of stuff, they're very clear. And even thought, I guess you could say, is often quite clear as well. So what's going on there? Well, there's a few things to say before I look at that. Not all of our realms of perception communicate clearly. Our insights and communication with the spiritual realm are actually very heavily impaired, are extremely impaired. We don't have a lot of clarity in that space, do we? Now, the other thing as well is that this is kind of maybe taking a little bit of a jump, but not everything is as straightforward as we often would like it to be. We would like to think that we do the right thing all the time, that we make the right decisions based on information we see. We see something, we go, yes, I should go and help that person out. Does that mean that we actually do that? Not all the time. So there's something else at work that is even, beyond, I guess, these, external to these things, these natural perceptions that we have. So what is it? And now we're going to introduce something else. There seems to be a veil or a semi-permeable barrier between the spiritual realm and our soul, doesn't there? There seems to be something that hinders our perception to the spiritual realm. We understand that we get little bits of information from God. We understand we get, we have coincidences, we have insights, that sort of thing. But as has been mentioned before, we definitely see through a glass darkly. We don't perceive everything that is going on. The interesting thing is, and as I mentioned before, we don't always find that we do what it is that we should. And what we find is that this veil, or this, I guess, semi-permeable layer. So semi-permeable means that information perhaps only goes one way, or it basically hinders it. A veil is a very good explanation. A veil like you would actually have in front of, say, in the more traditional marriages, for example, the bride would wear a veil. You wouldn't be able to see exactly what they looked like. You know, that sort of thing. So a veil is a good way to explain what it's like. So I guess the thing is that the Bible talks about this a lot, because the Bible, as Rodney mentioned before, yes, there's lots of events going on. There's prophecies that talk about, you know, the coming and going of nations and things like that. But the Bible is for people. It's for people like you and me, and it talks a lot about the way that we understand things, how we're made up, what these are, you know, why it is. It answers these big questions. Actually, if I could just take a side note on that. Some of the best proofs of the Bible can be summed up in a little mnemonic, which is really handy to remember. It can be done on your hand. The first is prophecy. You can remember that with your pinky. The second is unity. Remember, like the marriage ring type of thing. The Bible is a book with unusual unity, written over thousands of years with from people who have been kings or shepherds, or people who have been in the dungeons, people who have been in palaces, and yet somehow it all comes together in this amazing story. The Bible answers the big questions. The Bible is an index to history, and of course the Bible changes lives as well. It's a good little mnemonic for remembering the way that the Bible is really the most amazing book, and the book for all time and for every person. Anyway, I digress. Getting back to the veil. I get a little bit distracted because realistically, as you would expect, all of these ideas that we present are based on these verses and these hints that are found in the Bible. James 1:13-14 talks about us being tempted. It says, "Let no man say when he is tempted, I am tempted of God, for God cannot be tempted with evil, neither tempteth he any man. But every man is tempted when he is drawn away of his own lust and enticed." James also mentioned before about a verse which talks about being on guard against the wiles of the devil. Now, the wiles is, I had to actually look the word up. Wiles is kind of like, crafty, cunning, manipulative type ways. And so what we find in this veil is that it is also used against us. It doesn't just shield us from spiritual understanding, it also is used by Satan to actually encourage us, tempt us, whatever, to do the wrong thing. So it makes us susceptible to that. And so I mentioned before, it's an imperfection. It's something that we have inherited. Now, Romans 7 has a really great, Paul in his usual lawyer type fashion goes round and round and round, talks about this particular topic in 5 different ways. But he discusses this exact topic that I'm on at the moment here. And so I thought it'd be worthwhile reading a little extract from Romans 7. Starting at 15, and then we'll jump to 17-24. "For that which I do I allow not. For what I would, that do I not. But what I hate, that do I. Now then, it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. For I know that in me, that is in my flesh." So this is something, he's just made a connection there with this being a physical thing. Something within his flesh dwelleth no good thing. "For to will is present with me." Where do we find the will? We learnt before, the will is in the soul realm, right? "But how to perform that which is good, I find not." He doesn't have the strength against this higher, I guess, or more powerful being Satan, actually attracting him to do the wrong thing. "For the good that I would, I do not. But the evil which I would not, that I do. Now if I do that I would not," so in other words, if I do something which I do not want to do, "it is no more I that do it, but sin that dwelleth in me. I find then a law, that when I would do good, evil is present with me." So I reckon we could probably change the letters around in that little word at the top. And so where it said the veil before, now I'll go up. Take the letters, turn them around a bit, and you come up with the word he uses. The evil is present with me. For I delight in the law of God after the inward man. Paul was a strong believer. He was one who knew the teachings. He was one that was raised with all of the doctrine and the Torah and all those things. He knew what he had to do. But what does he confess in 23? But I see another law in my members, warring against the law of my mind and bringing me into captivity to the law of sin, which is in my members. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from the body of this death? It's a terrible thing, isn't it? He's recognised that there is this veil, that there is this imperfection in there. It causes us to not be able to fully see that spiritual realm, not to be able to fully understand everything that we should understand from that realm of perception. But and that it's actually something that's tied to our earthly body here. So, what do we learn from that? This veil prevents us from clearly seeing the truth from the spiritual realm. It is manifest in us as a physical or carnal imperfection. And of course, as Paul said, the body of this death, it causes us to die. And I think that's a really interesting sort of progression there. And in fact, it's interesting, when the curse is originally pronounced upon Adam and Eve, God says, dying ye shall die. That is the actual that's the actual interpretation of that particular curse. In the day you will eat of it, you will surely die. And it's a very interesting thing, and a terrible curse that's followed on mankind ever since that we've inherited that. So I guess finally, really, with this evil and imperfection in us, who can see God face to face? Well, we know it's not all good news initially. When Moses asked, Moses, who was the one who was God's mouth to the people, he was the one who could split oceans. He did amazing miracles in the name of God. God empowered him to do all of those things. He made a request to God, didn't he? He said, "Show me thy glory. I want to see you face to face." That's what he says to God, effectively. And God responded, "Thou canst not see my face, for there shall no man see me and live." So it sounds pretty dire. What we understand from our presentation here is that it is this imperfection that prevents us from seeing that. 1 Timothy 6:16, and it's talking about God, who only hath immortality, dwelling in the light which no man can approach unto, whom no man hath seen nor can see, to whom be honour and power everlasting. Amen. Dwelling in the light which no man can approach unto. Sounds pretty bright. Malachi 4:1, and it talks about the end times. Behold, the day cometh, that shall burn as an oven, and all the proud, yea, and all that do wickedly shall be stubble. And the day that cometh shall burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts, that it shall leave them neither root nor branch. This light, when God does actually return, when Jesus returns to the earth, he will destroy the evil. And it's not merely that we cannot see God. The point is, it is that what is within us cannot survive his presence. That's I guess the real point. It's not like God is hiding from us. It's not like he's put this thing here to actually, to hide away from us. It's because if he did reveal himself, then we would be obliterated. Following the smart glasses, analogy there, it'd be almost like if one of the tech companies came out one day and they had the perfect set of smart glasses. Everywhere you walked in the street, you'd see the history of buildings, you'd see the names of people all in front of you. It would be an amazing thing. And yet, it'd be like if we actually had a set of those and they destroyed us because there was too much information. This is the sort of parallel that we're facing here, where God is protecting us by moving a little back from us. I actually had a fellow once, we were talking about whether God was real. He wasn't an atheist, he was an agnostic. Okay, which is all right, we won't go into that. But interestingly, I said to him, well, what would it take? What would it take for you to believe that there is actually a God? And he said, well, if he revealed himself to me. And I thought to myself, be careful what you wish for. You know, that's what we're talking about here, is that if he appeared, there would be not much left of you anymore. But it's not all bad news. We do know that there will be a time when we can see God's face. And it's tied up with the removal of that curse being that evil which we've carried through from the original sin, from Adam and Eve. And there shall be no more curse, but the throne of God and the Lamb shall be in it, and his servants shall serve him, and they shall see his face, and his name shall be in their foreheads, in their minds, I expect. 1 John talks about the same, it takes it a little bit of a step back from the Revelation to perhaps closer to our current day. 1 John 3, 2 and 3. Beloved, now are we the sons of God, and it doth not yet appear what we shall be. But we know that when he shall appear, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And every man that hath this hope in him purifieth himself, even as he is pure. I think the message from 1 John 3 there is that there is things we need to be doing. There is a focus that we need to have. There is a life that we have to walk here on earth. John's talking about us being the sons of God. Well, I think he's taking a little bit of a liberty there. Like he says, we doth not yet appear what we shall be. Perhaps he's calling those things as spoken as done, something that we will be. We know that even Jesus, when he was here on earth, he called himself the Son of Man. The reason why he called himself the Son of Man is because he wasn't the son of Satan. You know, all of the people around him were the son of Satan. They carried the evil curse with them. Jesus did not. He was perfect, and he was the Son of God. And yet even he didn't appear what he was going to be at that time. Follow peace with all men, says Hebrews 12:14, and holiness, without which no man shall see God. So we can only if we are holy will we be able to see God face to face. So I guess the real reason is we shall see him face to face because we shall be made like him. That's the promise. As it says in Romans 8, whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed into the image of his Son, to be made as Jesus was. And whom he did predestinate, them he also called, so he does the calling. Whom he called, them he also justified, he justifies them. And then whom he justified, them he also glorified. There is a glory, like Moses was asking for, show me your glory. And God could have easily turned around and said, when you have a mirror of that glory, I will show you that. That's probably the other thing he could have said. So here's the promise. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and will give you an heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes. This is the walk that John talks about, with the path to purifying oneself. It's not just a vision, it's a whole transformation. The idea of smart glasses and overlaying the world, the reality with certain bits of information, that's all very good. The real hope for Christians and also for Israel is that perception, I guess, that overlay of information will become their reality. They will be transformed into being a spirit, soul and body being, yes, but without that evil veil. And that's truly when we will be made like Jesus Christ. We will become one of his brethren. Because you see, he was born without evil. He had no earthly father. He didn't receive the curse. Jesus actually tells us that greater works will we do because he goes unto his Father. And that greater work that will be done in us is the removal of the veil, that removal of that curse. So coming from that state, the only reason why we can do something greater than Jesus is because he didn't have the evil in the first place. So the greater work is the overcoming of that evil and becoming made like he is. So it's probably a good place to finish. I don't know if I got all those 8 points done, Rodney, but
Yeah, pretty close.
okay, well that's all right then. We'll leave it at that. Maybe about 75%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll do.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
There's one verse that you didn't actually use, Ben, that I thought you might have finished up with. The 8th Beatitude.
Oh, okay. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God.
Yep, that's
Okay.
it.
Right, there you go. Wow.
Yep. And you were talking about people being pure.
Well, yeah,
Pure in
that's the tie here.
Mm.
Every man hath his hope in him purifieth himself. So blessed
So
are the
John-
pure in heart, for he shall see God.
John must have been listening that day when Jesus said that.
Oh, you'd hope so.
It's 70 years, 50 years later he wrote it down.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Very good.
All right, any other questions or any questions for Ben from his presentation?
That must mean it's crystal clear, see?
Yeah, I think it's important just to probably emphasise again the difference in the spiritual and the physical, which you have brought out there. And we've talked about the evil being a physical thing that stops us in developing that, being able to see God physically. Spiritually, a lot of people feel they go through the experience of seeing God and seeing God clearly, but it's a spiritual level only, not the physical.
Yeah, I wonder about that, whether the whole concept of seeing God clearly, I mean, even people who claim they have seen God clearly, God is absolutely omniscient. He knows all things. Like if you the concept of being able to then see God clearly implies that you've seen all of him. Well, it's rather impossible, really.
Yeah,
from that point of view.
Yeah, so it's just that little part of us that God worked on that day had some sort of vision or some clearness. It was one of the functions of the smart glasses, but certainly not a full function of reality.
That's right.
Yeah.
Very good.
All right. Well, look, I think that brings to a conclusion the talk, and we trust that in the vision of our mind that each of us has seen something clearer or seen God more clearly. I always think it's a wonderful example that Ben brought up about Moses, that God said, Moses said he wanted to see God, and so God put him in the cleft of the rock, had his back towards him, and God, just the end of God's train passed by, and that was enough to make Moses' face shine for months and months. It was just such a cleansing power. So as Ben pointed out, if God were to appear right now in the fullness of his glory, if Jesus, as he was in Revelations, were to appear right now, the evil in us just would not be able to stand in that presence. And so we would, as Paul said, many shall be destroyed by the brightness of his coming, because physically we're not able to stand. Spiritually, yes, but physically we have to be looking for something greater and something more of, when I say we're looking for God to use his power to a greater extent to be able to bring us to understand and to accept those things.
Thank you for joining us for this special seminar series with the Christian Israelite Church. We've journeyed from the modern world of smart glasses to the timeless promise of spiritual renewal. We hope these presentations have helped you see that the unseen is not just a concept to be studied, but a reality to be experienced through the renewal of the mind and the spirit. If you have questions about the teachings shared today or would like to learn more about the Christian Israelite faith, we invite you to visit us online at cichurch.asn.au or connect with our Sydney community at cichurch.sydney.org.au. May you continue to seek the truth that lies beyond what is visible. Thank you, and God bless.